Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our event, Travailler avec France, how to approach the French market in the industrial field. My name is Adrian Sandu. I am Secretary General of ACAROM, the Association of Automotive Manufacturers of Romania. And once again, welcome to our event. Through this webinar, we will try to give you some information to consider the French market as a potential one for your businesses. And if you are trying to sell your products, if you are trying to find cooperation with French companies, or you can want to set up your businesses in France, in this webinar, we will try to offer you as much information as we can in order to do that. Before presenting the agenda of our webinar, I would like to let Guillaume Laurent, Administrator of the French Romanian Chamber of Commerce, to present you some few words about the French Chamber of Commerce and to introduce our events. But first, I would like to thank to our partners Ernst & Young and Business France for organizing this event. So, Guillaume, you have the floor.
Thank you, Adrian. Hello, everybody. I am very glad to introduce our event today. As you know, CCIFER is celebrating this year's 25 years old, with a business community gathering about 550 members. Our mission is based on 4 pillars. First one, create business opportunity to stimulate opportunity for our members. Second one, to contribute to the competitivity of our business community by representing their voice in the public dialogue. The third one, support company and their local and international development through different services. The fourth one helps company to better recruit and retrain their employees. So as you could see, CCIFER is not only for French company who wants to do business in Romania. A part of our third pillar, one of our priority is to support Romanian company in their international development in France. That is why we have decided to organize this first webinar in order to underline the opportunity for your company, and especially regarding the industry which represents a main sector, including automotive industry in the Romanian economy. I want to share with you a personal experience. I am French, based in Romania. I am Deputy CEO of a Romanian SME company called Industrial Montage, and we work as constructor for oil and gas industry, especially for refinery, power plants, etc. We are exposed to the brand exodus, is our reality in our business. It is that's why we start to work abroad in order to fight this. And I want to highlight this experience. During our first project abroad in 2016, I was waiting outside the refinery for my access card. During 5 minutes, I met 10 ex-welders of Industrial Montage, which were working for Italian, French companies, Spanish company. The construction site was full of Romanian workers. But we were, as Industrial Montage, the only Romanian company on site. And for me, it's something wrong here. Why Romanian company were not there? There are a lot of explanation on this topic. It's not the subject today, but I just want to underline, like an SME company, Romanian company, it is possible to work abroad. Personally, I really promote, encourage Romanian company to work abroad. So today, for me, it's a pleasure to open this first webinar on this topic. I hope you will get to learn interesting information from this webinar. I wish you a nice event. I want to thank you all our speakers, and I invite Gabriela Goran from Romanian Embassy in France to join. Hello, Gabriela. How is it in France?
Vous êtes en mute, Gabriela.
Gabriela?
Still on mute. Still on mute. Can you activate the mic, please? It's now okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for the introduction.
Yes.
And first of all, please allow me to deliver a special thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to this webinar. I'm delighted to address myself to the Romanian companies that are participating at this event and to provide an overview of the bilateral economic relations between Romania and France. My presentation will focus on the key figures of the bilateral trade between the two countries, the main group of products imported and exported, and in the end we will have a look at the opportunities for Romanian companies that are interested in the French market. So if we can pass to the first slide. Okay. The next slide, please. No. So it's okay. So the economic relations between Romania and France are very old, rich, and fundamental. As you know, France is one of Romania's most important commercial partners. Third place for exports, sixth place for imports, and with the exception of 2020, which was strongly impacted by the COVID pandemic, the tendency shows a steady overall rise in bilateral trade over the years. France ranks second among the countries with which Romania is registering a trade surplus after Great Britain and first among EU member states. As you can see, in 2019, the total bilateral trade reached almost 9 billion euros, registering a decrease of 0.17% compared to the previous year. The exports reached 4.76 billion euros, while the imports were 4.24 billion euros. The trade balance registered a surplus for Romania of 570 million euros, decreasing by 12% compared to 2018. In 2020, the bilateral trade reached 7.9 billion euros, a 12.24% decrease compared to 2019. The export registered also a decrease of 12.25%, and the imports decreased by 12.22%. Even in this condition, the trade balance has registered a surplus of approximately 447.6 million euros. And 2020's results show a decrease of the bilateral trade due to the COVID crisis that affected the economies worldwide. Next slide, please. Looking at the structure of Romanian exports toward France for 2019 and 2020, we noticed that 5 top categories of products remain dominant, notably machinery, equipment, and electrical appliances with 29% for 2020, vehicles, aircraft, and transport equipment with 28%, followed by plastics and rubber, textiles, and miscellaneous goods and products such as furniture. Also, we note that the exports are relying on the first group of products, machinery, appliances, electrical equipment and vehicles, aircraft and transport equipment. And in general, we can observe a tendency to consolidate the export of products with a high degree of processing. Next slide, please. Regarding the Romanian imports, the table shows us a significant percentage of the imports are concentrated on 3 groups of products, machinery, equipment, and electrical appliances, vehicles, aircraft, and transport equipment, and also chemical products. If we take a look at the 2019 and 2020 data, we see that the structure of imports remain constant with insignificant variations. Also, we notice a high dependence on the automotive industry and the horizontal industry that are developed in Romania as a result of Renault's presence. Next slide, please. Talking about the main assets of the French economy, in 2018, industry accounted for 13% of France's gross domestic product, 11% of which was in manufacturing. France is, as you know, home to many global leaders in industry, and it's fully representative for tomorrow's high technology industries like aerospace, automotive, agri-food, energy transition, nuclear. Also, France ranks second in the world for the aerospace exports and has the second largest automotive industry in Europe. Investments in R&D are over 24.9 billion euros. And France has also a very powerful manufacturing industry and has a remarkable expertise in all stages of nuclear energy production, from fuel extraction to reprocessing. France was also ranked first agri-food producer in the Eurozone in 2017, and it's shaping up to become one of the most competitive, innovative, and low-carbon economies in the world. With a population of approximately 65 million, a strong industrial base, and many large national businesses, France offers good export potential. Aerospace, automotive, energy, ITC, agriculture, and food are all large sectors. Also, France hosts some of the biggest international trade fairs, offering access to French and international buyers. And there are significant options to increase and diversify Romanian exports in France, especially when talking about innovative products of the aeronautical and defense industry, construction materials, furniture and wood products, and also food and beverages. Regarding the automotive and aerospace sectors, the French market is a hub for important players in advanced engineering and manufacturing, with notable global firms such as Airbus, Renault, Peugeot, and this could create various opportunities for Romanian suppliers that are in the field. For example, we might consider exports of spare parts, low-end components, machinery equipment and electrical appliances, vehicles, aircraft and transport equipment, subcontracting activities, and even technical expertise. ITC and artificial intelligence, the French market offers various opportunities in the field of cybersecurity, fintech and deep tech, and software development, automation software and tools, cloud computing solution, and also different innovative products. Regarding the energy sector, France is developing its renewable energy capacity, and hydrogen has gained a lot of interest from the public and private sector. This could create opportunities for partnership in this field between the two countries that also results. For the construction sector, there are export opportunities for construction materials, carpentry made of plastics, aluminium, wood, insulating materials for increasing energy efficiency, wood houses and structures. The French market for drink and food is mature, sophisticated, and served by suppliers from all over the world. Important factors for the French market include health, traceability, quality, and value for money. France is Europe's second largest consumer of organic food and drink after Germany, and the new trends include vegan wine and bio products. Also, French are known for their interest in new culinary experience, so you can note that it's a market that can be available for the Romanian companies. In the field of textiles, clothing, and accessories, namely garments, innovative and organic textiles, fashion design, specialized products for sports and protection, knitwear, footwear, clothing, and leather could be introduced to the French market. As you can see, there are various opportunities for Romanian companies, and we encourage you to approach the French market and to pursue partnerships that will strengthen the bilateral relations between our two countries. Thank you very much for your attention, and I remain at your disposal for any other additional information.
Thank you, very much, Mrs. Goran, for your detailed presentation about the trade situation between Romania and France. I would like to give some information about our event. We will have today speakers that will offer you a lot of information concerning how to do business with France and how to implement your businesses connections with French companies. And also an administrative issue. We have a Q&A section on the screen, so you can ask your question, and we will respond to your question alongside the event, or at the end of the event we will have a Q&A session where you can address your questions to all of our speakers. I will now like to go in the deeper market of the French market, deeper insight of the French market. And I would like to welcome Vincent Rofost, associate partner of Ernst & Young. I know that last year Ernst & Young launched an attractive survey among foreign investors regarding many countries, including France. Vincent, can you tell us what were the main lessons that we get from this survey regarding the attractivity of France in doing businesses, and also to underline the main key facts for our audience, for our participants to our event?
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. If you can't see me, it's no problem. You're not missing much, but I hope you can hear me. So before we move to this slide, maybe just a bit of background. So I'm an associate partner with EY. I've been working with EY for the past 17 years, and I'm very specialized on international investment, which means that I have two types of clients. I work for governments, so countries, regions, and cities, mostly through their investment promotion agencies, and we help them attract foreign investments from any sectors and any kind of activities. And also we work for corporate clients, so private sector clients, and what we do for them is that we help them in their international investment strategies. And as part of that, we with EY, some of you may know it already, but every year we publish a number of reports and thought leadership studies about investment dynamics across Europe and in France as well. And so we have it's an annual report that we do. So there is the European report, which is the umbrella flagship report about the attractiveness of Europe for foreign investment. And then you have some country-specific studies. There is every year one study about the attractiveness of France. There will be, one study about the attractiveness of Romania. There are, a number of studies where we have these kind of reports, and it's going to be so. What I'm going to take you through today is a few highlights, from the past report that we have published on the attractiveness of both Europe and France. And the next one that we will publish this year about the attractiveness of France will be released on the 7th of June. So, at some point, if you need to have a presentation with these, very latest results about and dynamics about investment in France, that will be possible on the 7th of June. But for now, I'm going to take you through the key highlights from the past reports that we have done about the attractiveness of Europe and the attractiveness of France. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, no, oh, yeah, this one, very good. So this is a thing that I should mention as well. The way we measure the attractiveness of Europe and the attractiveness of the different countries is by doing two things. First, we look at the reality of foreign direct investment projects every year across Europe, in terms of sector distribution, in terms of destination countries and regions and cities. And the second source that we use, so this is the reality of investment, and we compare that every time with the perception of investors. So every time, the few highlights that I'm going to take you through are coming from these two sources of data. The one that you see here on the screen is the number of foreign direct investment projects that have been made in Europe across the years. So you have the evolution of the attractiveness of Europe. So it means that in total, in 2019, there were 6,412 investment decisions made by foreign investors in Europe. So it's, as you can see, the attractiveness of Europe has been increasing along the years. Obviously, there has been, a few a few dips here and there, depending on the the economic crisis that we've had. But we're rather on the highs of the attractiveness since 2017, and the level of activity of foreign direct investment in Europe remained quite high back in 2019. So these figures from 2019 were reported in our past year report in 2020. So if we move to the next one, please, the next slide. Obviously, there was 6,400 approximately investment decisions that were made by foreign investors across Europe last year. But we all know that given the very exceptional situation and the pandemic, many of these projects were at risk and couldn't be really implemented because of the situation. And especially what you're seeing here is that according to our estimates based on interviews with investors, with investment promotion agencies, we estimate that approximately 35% of the projects that were announced were actually either delayed or even canceled at some point. So there was and that sounds quite obvious, because of the pandemic. But it will be very interesting, this year to see what has been the activity for FDI in Europe last year. Now that investors, are kind of more learning how to cope with the crisis. So if we move to the next page, please. So this is still about, the European investment landscape. What you're seeing here on this map is that actually, so France last year became the #1 destination country for foreign investment, ahead of the UK and Germany. So usually, it's always been, France has always been in the top 3 destination countries. It's been #2 for a number of years, and then Germany took over France, and then the UK was always #1. But now with the Brexit and so on, with all the transformations and shifts that everybody knows in Europe, that allowed France to become the first destination, the main destination for foreign direct investment last year. Of course, we need to caveat that with the fact that many of the projects that were announced were actually postponed or even cancelled, and that would apply to all the countries that we have that we are looking at in our survey. So and in terms of market share, France is capturing 18 or close to 19% of all the projects that are invested in Europe. So approximately 19% of market share in terms of number of projects. So if we can move to the next page, please. So this is the view of the sector distribution of investment, foreign direct investment in Europe. As you can see here, there is this graph is telling you 2 things. First, it's telling us that the industrial sectors are absolutely critical to the attractiveness of Europe. But at the same time, what you're seeing here is that those critical industrial sectors are the most at risk with the pandemic, and have been the one that have been more suffering from the pandemic and the decrease of attractiveness of Europe in terms of foreign investment. But you can see here that, for instance, the automotive and the aerospace sectors are really really essential to the attractiveness of Europe, and that's also true for France. But at the same time, they are probably among the most impacted sectors in terms of impact of the pandemic. So can we move to the next slide, please? Okay. So this one is based on this result that you're seeing here is based this time not on the reality of foreign investment, but this is based on the perception of investors. And what you're seeing here is that the attractiveness, the perceived attractiveness of Europe is kind of improving. And you have a comparison here between two surveys that we did about the attractiveness of Europe, one back in April 2020, and the other one, Pulse survey back in October. And we could see already in October that the level of investors who are seeing the attractiveness of Europe improving is increasing compared to what we could see at the beginning of the pandemic. So that's a good sign. What I can tell you already for now, without being allowed to disclose any of these statistics, but I can tell you that the latest surveys that we have conducted and that will be released at the beginning of June is confirming this trend that investors are definitely seeing things improving in terms of the future attractiveness of Europe. So there is definitely optimism, realism as well from investors, but clearly optimism compared to the beginning of the pandemic. So if we can move to the next page, please. Okay. So this one is it's interesting. It's also a comparison between what investors were seeing in October compared to the beginning of the pandemic. And we saw at the beginning of the pandemic that all the investors were really putting their main concerns and priority around the availability of stimulus packages. And we're seeing that gradually things are going back to normal, where we see the level of interest for stimulus recovery packages, which is kind of decreasing, and investors have expectations around what makes Europe attractive, which are much more aligned with what we could see pre-COVID. And this is what you can see here on this graph, where, for instance, we had 80% of them who were telling us back in April of 2020 that the weight of national stimulus packages and their impact was, the main factor influencing their investment decisions. And now, back in October, it was only 38%, which is, a good signal of recovery of the attractiveness of Europe. And you can see that the level of attention which is given to other kind of attractiveness factors and parameters is much more evenly distributed across all the different items, like, for instance, the availability of skills and the quality of the business environment in general. So this is also, again, the key message here is that this is signaling a return to, gradual return to kind of a new normal, but where investors are starting to plan things in a much more normal way again, and not feeling, so much panicked as they used to feel back in April. So things are recovering step by step. Next slide, please. So can we move to the next page, please? Okay. Yeah, this one. So what will change? What will be, the new shape and form of investment? What will be the impact, of the COVID crisis on their supply chain models, and what will be the impact of these changes to the supply chain models on the investment? What we're seeing here is that, back in April, investors were telling us that they were expecting, massive changes to their supply chain organization. And it seems that after a period of shock because of the pandemic, they are also here going back to normal and kind of reconsidering what they were, initially perceiving, and telling us that, and we don't have so many of them that are considering reshoring, repatriating activities back to their home markets. So we should expect, a few changes here and there on the supply chain, especially, when it comes to reducing the dependence on some specific countries or dominant countries in the value chain, but we should definitely not expect any, massive radical change in the way supply chains are organized. So, and this is what's reflected here. And this is, by the way, rather good news in terms of how that will positively impact the attractiveness of Europe ultimately. So can we move to the next page, please? So this one, still, I know and you know that there are a lot of political comments around reshoring and repatriation of activities. What we see is that definitely there will be relocation of activities within the supply chain, but again, we should not expect any massive reshoring of activities, let's say, for instance, from Southeast Asia back to Europe. But still, we have 45%, in total of respondents, which are contemplating moving or relocating parts of their supply chain. And that could well, benefit Europe, not only Western Europe, of course. That would also benefit some, other countries, and especially for investors that are looking for nearshoring opportunities to adapt and adjust their supply chain and bring back, some of their operations closer to their target markets, but not necessarily in their target markets directly. So can we move to the next page, please? Okay, so now we're entering a section which is about the attractiveness of France more specifically. And so this is showing you what makes France attractive. So unfortunately, I'm not able to tell you what is the sector distribution of foreign investment in France for the last year, because results are still under embargo. But here you can see that there are two main pillars for the attractiveness of France in terms of foreign investment, which are the digital and business services, which is, historically, it has always been the main engine of a number of investment decisions made in France. But also there is a very significant presence of industrial sectors. And by the way, you will see in the next slides that France is, also the first destination countries for foreign investment in industrial activities. So can we move to the next page, please? Yes, so on this one, what you can see here is illustrating what I just mentioned, the fact that France is the first destination country, not only overall for the past year, but also it has been the first destination countries for manufacturing activities for the past 10 years. So, of course, we are not measuring, we're not seeing what's being relocated from France elsewhere, or the number of industrial jobs that are destroyed or disappearing, but rather because of automation rather than relocation. But if you look at, the incoming inward investment flows, what you're seeing here is that France has been, the leading destination in Europe for manufacturing projects for the past 10 years. It was the same for R&D projects, and the two of them are quite connected, because we see a number of manufacturing investors who are also opening or expanding their R&D activities in France. And so we will see, this year what it looks like. But I can tell you that, of course, France remains, somewhere in the top destination countries for manufacturing operations. And as you can see, maybe you can't see it very clearly here because it's very small, but many of these projects, manufacturing projects, are actually coming from investors who are already operating and present in France, and they are expanding their operations. So which means that once investors are operating and established in France, they tend to reinvest and expand their operations, and this is really fueling the attractiveness of France. So next page, please. So On this page, you see a comparative view of the attractiveness of France for industrial operations. So at the top of this chart, you can see here that's the performance of France. I'm sorry, it's written very small, but so France in 2018 had received 339 industrial projects, which was an increase of almost 5%, quite ahead of Germany and the UK in 2018. So again, you will see on the 7th of June what's the performance of France in attracting a manufacturing investment. I can't disclose this number for now, but you will see that it's still somewhere in the leading destinations. Okay, so this is about the perception of investors about France. So here you see we asked 2 questions about the attractiveness of the different European countries. And on the left hand side, you're seeing the ranking of European countries that investors perceive as being the most attractive. And you have a very strong credit image to Germany first, the UK number 2, which is quite resilient despite the Brexit, and France number 3. So this is the overall attractiveness. Now, on the right-hand side, you're seeing what the ranking was back in October of 2020 about the most credible and investment-friendly recovery plans that were pushed forward, by governments. And we are seeing that Germany was, being considered as proposing the most attractive recovery plan, followed by France for 43% of investors, and then the UK. So here as well, there are a few changes in the way, in the perception of investors, since October, and we'll be able to disclose these rankings at the beginning of June. But you will see that, yes, there are a few changes, probably due to the vaccination campaigns throughout Europe. And obviously, this is also quite benefiting in terms of image to the UK, despite Brexit and its impact. So if we move to the next slide, please. So this slide is just a listing of what the recovery package or recovery plan is proposing, not to investors, but in general. And so just as a key takeaway, so things are changing, kind of every day, but just as a key takeaway, you have this very strong recovery plan, which is being pushed forward. At the time we did this listing, it was approximately 42 billion euros that were, invested in this recovery plan. And it's divided into 3 main blocks. You have a block around competitiveness, another one around sustainability, and another one around social measures. And across all these 3 categories, you have some measures that do apply to attracting, foreign investment, and that can be mobilized to attract foreign investment, so from other countries, for companies to establish new operations or to expand operations in France. So if we move to the next page, please. This is more specifically to illustrate how is the industrial attractiveness of France and what's the geographical distribution of the industrial attractiveness. So on the left-hand side, you see this map, where this kind of a heat map with the hotspots for industrial operations in France. And maybe more interestingly, what you're seeing on the right-hand side is what we call the cite clé en main or turnkey sites, which is a specific program which has been established by the government to promote and to support the development of industrial activities in France. And basically, it's identifying and offering some ready-to-use industrial plots for investors, where investors, can accelerate all the permitting and all the different due diligence to establish new operations in these sites. And so you have this list of turnkey sites, which is constantly updated, and which is really made to attract and support industrial operations in France. And that does apply, of course, to industrial investors. So if we can move to the next page, please. So having said that, we saw that the attractiveness of France is quite, or France is a leader in manufacturing, in attracting manufacturing operations. But yet, there are still some reforms which are very much expected from investors to improve the attractiveness of France. So this is a view of, from the past, but these are kind of long-term expectations, and this is a recurring, expectation which is being expressed by investors around the development of education and skills. So I always tell my clients that location is really about talent. There is really a race for talent, including for industrial operations, which is absolutely critical. So that's why you're seeing that here on this screen. More support for SMEs, more competitiveness, more cost competitiveness, with especially lower labor costs, because the level of social security paid by the employers in France is still quite high, and more support to innovation. So these kind of improvements that we're seeing here are really recurring themes that are being expressed by foreign investors. If we move to the next one, there is another key area which is considered as an area for improvement by investors, which is around a more simplified administrative environment. So this is not only applying to France, but for sure, this is something that is very much expected from investors, as well as, again, some cost-related parameters. So these are for the areas for improvement. But to finish on a more positive note, if we move to the next page, please. This is a view about how if investors are in general seeing France as an attractive location or a satisfying location for their operations. And what we're seeing here is that clearly there is an increase of response rate for people saying that they have a good level of satisfaction about the attractiveness of France and suitability of France as a location for their operations. And post-COVID, so we're still working on that and investigating it. But what you can see here is that we have already 32% of business leaders that do expect an improvement in France image in a post-COVID world. So this is also signaling some good level of confidence about the future attractiveness of France. So I've walked you through the main highlights here from this presentation. And I'm very happy to take any questions you may have, of course. I can't see the screen and the chat, so I'm not sure if there are questions already, but I'll be happy to at least do my best to answer these questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vincent, for your presentation. Very good insight of the French current situation. We've seen some changes due to the COVID-19 crisis, but we've also seen some important sector that must be taken into consideration by the future investment in France. And as we do not have a question for the moment, I would like to give the floor to Ludovic Daguerre from Business France that will give us more information about how we can invest in France, and what is the fiscal system, and what are the incentives that Romanian companies can benefit from. So Ludovic, if you can hear us.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. So I'm based in Germany, so hi from Germany to everyone. So let me introduce Business France first. We're a governmental agency responsible for the internalization of the French economy, and we foster foreign investment towards France. Our offices are based generally in French embassies. To do so, and to accomplish our missions, we rely on a wide network of partners. So the economic departments of French embassies, but also the French bilateral chambers of commerce, which are a very strong local private partner for us. We also rely on national partners, such as ministries, banks, state agencies are regional, as you can see, also the heads of the regions, and Pôle de Compétitivité, which are special entity, which I can detail one day if I have a private meeting with you. We also rely on La French Tech, BPI France. So just to have a quick insight, you can go on the next slide. So how can we help you, Business France? So as a Romanian investor, we can help you in your investment project. So if you want to open an office, if you want to buy a production site or a distribution site, a warehouse. Also, if you want to hire new employees, if you want to extend your office, which is for us an expansion project. Also technological partnerships, acquisition of an ailing business is also part of our mission, such as startups, VCs also. And also relocating your staff in France is one of the projects we can assist you. Next slide, yeah. So as Vincent talked a bit about the R&D, so France is still in the top for R&D, was for many years the #1 in Europe for R&D inward investment. You can get a tax credit called the research tax credit of up to 30% in your R&D spendings. And above 100 million euros, you get 5% tax credit. 100% of companies, as you see, are eligible as long as you have R&D activities in France. And for example, in 2019, the global support from the government was above 6 billion euros. So it's quite interesting for if you plan to have R&D activities in France. Next slide, please. So a question that I usually get is about the corporate tax rate in France. It used to be much higher, but with the Macron government, we have implemented many reforms to lower the corporate tax rate. So as you see in 2020, it was like about 28%, and we're aiming at 25% in 2022. Also for small companies with turnover until like 38,000 euros, you can get a 15% reduced rate. Yeah, so next slide, please. So just to show you, because most of the time I get questions between France and Germany, most like a comparison. So in France, as we said, in 2020, it's about 28%. It gets to 31% if your turnover is over 250 million euros. But in Germany, the national rate is about 15%, but then you have local rates. And these local rates are generally, as you can see in the bottom right, between 14 to 17%. So when you combine it, it's about like 30 to 33% of corporate tax rate. So France is actually lower, has a lower corporate tax rate than Germany. Next slide, please. So just to give you an insight of the support you can get from France for your investment. So as we talked about the research tax credit, you can also get for new companies. I think it's interesting to know that you can get several measures of exemption from corporate income tax for 5 to 8 years. Also establishing in certain areas, depending on where you settle, French companies can enjoy various tax reductions or even exemptions. So I think this was one of the things that can be interesting for some of the invitees today. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, a question that I get a lot is a cliche about the productivity of French employees. So in France, we have a statutory baseline of 35 hours, but this is not a limit. So French people won't tell you, I won't work than 35 hours. This is a baseline beyond which overtime is calculated. So French people can work more than 35 hours. 63% of employees in France work beyond 35 hours. And as you see, also I heard like 35 hours and about productivity. France is the 6th worldwide most productive country per hour worked. So as you can see, we're above United Kingdom and so on. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Also about the hourly labor costs, I've heard that people think that France is very expensive. To have a French employee is very expensive, but actually, as you can see, so this is a graphic from 2018 with numbers from 2018. You can see that in France, the hourly cost was about 36.5. In Germany, it's 35. And now it's even getting narrow. You can go to the next slide, please. As you will see that Germany, in 2008, France was about 31.2 and Germany 27.9. Today in 2020, we're at, as we said, 37.5 and Germany is at 36.6. So as you can see, the pink line is Germany, the green line is France. And as you can see, it tends to narrow and get like, so before this argument of labor costs being more costly in France than in Germany was okay, receivable, but now it tends to be quite much the same. The blue line being the EU average of hourly cost. You can go to the next slide. So yeah, also something that I hear a lot is about French labor law and how to dismiss an employee in France. So I won't get in much details here, but of course, there's the resignation from the employee, there's the mutual consent, or also if the French employee doesn't behave well, simple negligence, willful misconduct, incompetence, repeated absences are also valid for a dismissal. But you can also have a dismissal for economic reasons if you're afraid about how your business will work in France. So if you're faced with technological changes or need to be reorganized to safeguard its competitiveness for your company, experiencing also economic difficulties, you can dismiss people. Also, since 2017, there's a collective termination by agreement that has been introduced. And this type of dismissal allows voluntary dismissal for employees, like voluntary resignations, kind of. So once employee voluntarily and willingly apply and accept to leave the company, they cannot challenge the termination of their employment contract. And what if it goes to court? I've heard a lot of investors asking me about how, what happens if this is judicially contested and so on. So since 2017, there's a limit of the compensation granted to the former employee by the court. So it is calculated and depending on the seniority of the former employee. So as an example, an employee with 5 years of seniority can be granted by the judge a compensation between minimum 3 months of salary up to 6 months. There won't be more. This is the limitation introduced and implemented. Sorry. Okay, next slide. And just to achieve my quick intervention, I wanted to talk about like a success story from an Eastern European country, which is Poland. So Chemet Group has acquired the French liquefied gas manufacturer GLI, Gaz Liquéfié Industrie, which had like 2 factories in France, in Bas-Rhin and Vienne, and many other like service points. And this, I think this is a good illustration of what you can expect as a support from Business France. So the Chemet Group bought this, made this acquisition for 3.15 million euros. They saved also the 500 jobs, and it is part of their strategy to acquire to conquer the Western European market. As you can see, the revenues of the French company reached nearly 60 million euros in the first year after the acquisition. And in cooperation with regional investment support institutions, they plan to organize training programs to adapt the skills of current and future employees for the company. Yeah. And you can go to the next slide. So I thank you for your attention, and I will be glad to receive any question, or if you have questions to invest in France, I am your contact person, so don't hesitate. And if you need, I can send you my PDF also.
Thank you, Ludovic. Of course, we need your presentation. Also, we need Vincent's presentation because I'm sure our participants will need this kind of information in order to have the best decision for investing in France or implementing their businesses in France. But as we move forward to our event, now I'm going to present you a success story of a company that already had the decision to go in France and to expand their activities in the French market. And this company is Qfort. Qfort, it's a Romanian company that manufactures heat insulation joinery for Romania, but also for the whole European market. And they started to have their activities in France since 2010. So I would like to welcome Paul Kerchu, which is CEO of Q4 France, to tell us more about Q4 and what are the businesses that Q4 does.
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you to the organizers for this webinar. I hope I can provide participants with a small insight on how to do business in France, from a perspective of a smaller company rather than these big institutional investors. I think Vincent gave a very detailed high-level view of macro trends happening across Europe and France in particular. If that lets you thinking, some of you, how does that apply to me and my company? Well, my role is to provide a more practical view of a Romanian company doing business in France. Just like to mention that we don't do as nice slides as EY, but we'll try our best. And before I go into presenting the group and what we do, the general feeling I have, as Guillaume mentioned in his opening words, is that there is not enough Romanian SMEs doing business in Western Europe, and I think that's a shame, and that's something we should correct. So in my message today, I'll try and give you a few hints on how to do it based on our experience, and hopefully we can all contribute to a more sustained presence of Romanian businesses abroad, and particularly in France. Can we start the PowerPoint, please? So I'll give a quick introduction of Qfort, or Casa Nostra, as the group is called. We are in a few industries, but the main one is this windows and doors manufacturing and accessories. We also construct apartments and houses in Craiova, particularly. And we are a partner for Vodafone in Romania with a company called Elex, which is a distribution network for Vodafone. The group Casa Nostra, our house, notre maison. Well, I guess most viewers are in Romania, so you would understand that. Can we move to the next slide, please? So I'll try and give a very brief overview of Qfort. We created this brand in 2008 in the middle of the crisis, the previous crisis. This sort of shows our willingness to invest. We spent quite a bit of money on this marketing at that time to create a brand which resonates well across many countries in the world, so that it's not just for the Romanian companies. So the Q stands for quality, and Qfort, obviously fort, solid, resistance. So our promise is built to last, or proiectat să reziste in Romanian. We sort of translate that in all the languages we're present. So in French, that would be construit pour durer, which is what you see on the left. And we stand by this brand promise to try and differentiate ourselves from some of our competitors. I won't bore you too much with these details, but particularly in France, your clients or your partners like this sort of story of what the values are that define you. So we are a company that is very practical and efficient. We work well together in a team, and we have a passion for a job well done, and that translates to a very good commercial relationship with our partners. where we create win-win solutions. So we try and give them a solution to their problem, and at the same time, they offer us increased sales and a market to expand our products. Brief history. I apologize. The graph is in French. I didn't translate it, but I'm sure it's not very hard to understand. So the company was created in 1995. 2004, we started manufacturing in that little garage you see on the bottom left in outskirts of Craiova. We quickly became leader of the Romanian market in 2006. By offering a more quality product than most of what our competitors were doing at the time. In 2007, we invested in this production plant that you see in the middle. Here we are in 2020 with the picture on the right. More buildings were added. We are now at about 30,000 square meters of production facilities. And more is to follow over the next few years. In terms of distribution, we started exporting in around 2010, very shyly in the beginning. We didn't really know how anything worked, but we didn't really have a choice at the time. We needed to diversify our markets because things were not going very well in construction in Romania at the time, as I'm sure some of you might remember. So we went to Italy, mostly because of cultural similarities and opportunities we had there. And then 2014, we went to France, and these are our two main export markets as of now. I can tell you more about the other places we export. So the next slide, we sell across many other countries, but only two places where we have national distribution networks. So a structure in place that is there for doing bigger volumes are France and Italy. So we have more than 1,000 partners across Europe and Canada and the United States very recently. And we like to we like to compare ourselves with some of our largest competitors, some of which are French, and I can talk more about that further. Can we move to the next slide, please? So here you can see the growth of our sales over the last 10 years. We only started manufacturing about 17 years ago, and we have a very high level of investment in our manufacturing facilities, which is at the same level of our revenue. And I think not a lot of companies can boast that, but it sort of shows our commitment to improving our industrial tool.
Paul, we saw that you have an increase in your businesses, and we saw also that you expand your customer network to all over Europe and not only. Can you tell us how did you begin working with France, and what was your decision to implement your activities there, and what was your strategy? What were the main focuses of your strategy in doing business in France and to expand your activities?
Sure. So I have a little slide prepared for why France and how we chose that market. But before I get into that, 7-8 years ago when we went there, we didn't have a lot of money to invest in partnerships and these sort of things. So we really did the groundwork. We found partners such as sales agents who lived there. I mean, particularly in the beginning, Romanian sales agents who had moved to France. So they were sort of a bridge between us and some of our first clients, which we call partners. We don't have clients. We try and create this win-win solution for our partners. And yeah, they were commission-based in the beginning, and they literally spent their day knocking on doors. To showrooms, different companies that sell windows, and said, listen, I represent this company from Romania. Here's our competitive advantage. Here's what we do differently, and give us a try. And some of them did, and we luckily managed to convince them to work with us. So that's how we started. And to go back to the slide, strategically, why France is a good market, at least in our industry, but I'm really sure that this applies for many other industries. along the industrial secondary sector, is that there are really high margins. Obviously, purchasing power in France is very high, similar to other Western European big markets. There's high margins, and the important thing for us is that there were high margins across the value chain. So not just for the manufacturer, but also for the reseller, the shop, the corner shop selling windows to the final clients. And the installers also make a good living. So that to us signified a healthy competitive environment, somewhere where we can go and have a place along the value chain. Because if there isn't a lot of margin to be made, and you try and disrupt someone in place, then it leads to all sorts of price wars. So we didn't want that. Particularly in our industry, France has a lot of history in making windows. Some of the oldest window manufacturers are in France. And 10, 15 years ago, they were a bit in a honeymoon phase, a bit unchallenged. The quality of their products hadn't really evolved. It was sort of a good opportunity for Eastern European companies such as us, or not just us. Romania has more success stories in this field, and so does Poland or the Czech Republic. We came with a more quality product, better performance in terms of insulation, and we sort of forced the local competitors to adapt as well. So that was my next point. The product quality was a low base. It isn't anymore, but it was about 10 to 15 years ago. The next point is a bit mixed, because you would think there's high barriers to entry, which makes it difficult. But once you're in, you become part of the establishment, and you are also protected by those high barriers of entry. So although it's really tough in the beginning, it is worth it in the long term. And lastly, to show this graph about the import evolution of windows. So every year, in France, about 10.5 million windows are sold, whether that's renovation or new projects being built. As you can see, we've now surpassed the 10% mark. More than 1.1 million of those are imported. So 15 years ago, if you went to a window reseller and said, I have a window made in Romania, what do you think? He would not even listen to you. He would shut the door in your face. Today, they've understood that there is business to be made with some companies that are not French, and they will at least listen. So consumer attitudes are changing, and I've only been in France since 2017, but I've seen a big shift over the last 3 to 4 years.
And concerning your strategy, what moved you to go in France, and what are now the main focuses of your businesses?
So my message to our audience would be, try and put yourself in the shoes of your client. Why would they, or your potential client or your partner, in case I saw some of the participants are purchasing managers, or maybe people who are less interested in sales and growing their business, although I did see that some business development people as well. Put yourself in the shoes of your potential client, and they've been working with their supplier probably for a long time. And you come in and you tell them you're wonderful and you do things much better. It's very hard to convince them. So you need to have a very strong value proposition. And I think that's where us as Romanian companies sometimes get it. I hate these generalizations, but I think I've seen it over the last few years. We don't really know how to focus on our strengths. And we do have strengths, but sometimes we don't know how to focus on them. And if I can show you some of examples of what we focused on in terms of competitive advantages. Just to give you a few ideas of potentially, maybe some of you can implement some of these. We have tried to vertically integrate as much as possible so that we can control the quality and the speed of our execution. So we don't just assemble a window. We try and do all the back sort of processes internally, such as applying color to the window or making the double insulated glass or triple ourselves instead of buying it already made. So this allows us to have sort of a complete vertical approach, and we did this from the beginning. And then it required in 2007-8 a large investment at the time, which was risky, but it did pay off. So this sort of vertical integration allows us to guarantee the speed. If there's a problem, a technical problem with, I don't know, someone dropped a glass in the production plant, well, we can quickly stop the line and redo it so that our client doesn't suffer. And that's very important to provide the speed and reliability, and the quality. We can control the quality of all this. And it also allows us to internalize all the costs associated with all these steps to provide a correct pricing position. Whereas if I buy things that are pre-made, obviously there's a margin that company adds, so that that goes away from your company instead of staying inside. The second thing, we focus a lot on our products. Some of our differentiation compared to other window makers is that we offer a very wide range of products. We don't just do one thing, so we now do both PVC and aluminium, and the wide range of products. It's very, very technical to get into, but and we focus on the benefits that these products bring to our clients. We don't give them a window. Anyone can make a window, but we give them a solution to their problem. So if the client has noise outside his window because his apartment is right in front of a main street, then we don't talk about anything else but noise insulation, and we've drilled that in. That is the solution to his problem, and we give him a specific solution. We don't give him a general glass. We give him a sound insulation glass. So focusing on these sort of benefits to the client allows us to, and having this wide range allows us to respond to any benefit that the client might need, any solution to any problem that he might have. And on the right there, I think the presentation will be shared afterwards. On the right there, you have some of the advantages of using our products, and we focus on the ones that the client wants, and that is a differentiation, because some of our clients just want to just propose the same window to everyone, no matter what their problem, and that we think is a mistake. Moving on, we work with some of the best industrial partners that we can find in each of their industries. These are very industry specific companies. Some of you might know some of them, but despite the fact that we could buy some of these things cheaper from smaller companies, we choose not to, because it guarantees the quality of our products in time, and our brand value promise to our clients is built to last, construit pour durer, and we wouldn't be able to have that unless we worked with some of the best companies in their fields. Moving on, and a point which is, did you have a question again, or?
Yes, I have a question. I've seen all these advantages, and I'm wondering what were the main challenges, and what are your advices for a potential company that wants to do business with French company, or a company that wants to have a plant as you do or an office in France? What are from your experience, what are these tough points?
There's quite a few, but we'll focus on the most important ones. So in 2018, we actually created a subsidiary in France called CCIFER France. So we are no longer a Romanian company selling in France. We are a French company selling in France. We did that because we felt we had to. Speaking of customer attitudes that are changing, that has helped a lot over the last few years, because when you try and convince a reseller that your products are he's comforted knowing that he buys in France, because if there's anything wrong, he knows what the process is. He knows what in case he has to take you to court or anything like that, it's all governed by French law. So they're very comforted by that, and that was a strategic move that we did 3 years ago, which was not easy, but and obviously in terms of cost, it has quite a lot of downside as well, but it has been worth it, and the increase in sales over the last few years that have been generated also because of this. I had a slide about challenges. I think we can have a quick look at it. So yeah, this administrative that I think Vincent was talking about it as an opportunity to improve. We actually find it not as hard as Romania. Some of you might know the bureaucracy in Romania. Actually, France is quite a lot better in terms of that, but they are very strict in the application. So just make sure you get someone who gives you the right advice. We work with an expert comptable, accountant in France who is Romanian, and that allows us to have both points of view because they know the company knows the Romanian legislation and the French legislation. And whenever we have a new activity, we just ask the question and we make sure we follow the rules very carefully. And now with Clifford France as a French company, that allows us to do that quite well. A challenge is proximity. Physical presence always helps. So I know it's costly, but if you can, jump on a plane, go talk to people face to face. That really helps a lot in establishing a connection with people. And I think that's important in all cultures, but in France as well. Trade fairs are a good source of contacts. We do every year a big stand. We rent 400 square meters. It costs us about 3 to 4% of our P&L, but it is a very good source of contacts, and it sends a message that you're there and you want to do business. I encourage you to look into your industries and see what trade fairs are around, and look if you can maybe just go as a participant. And in the future, if you want to understand the value of it, you could also look at that. And yeah, I'll talk about just the last point, the mentality. Obviously, as you can imagine, a lot of people here are Romanian company, low quality. It must be cheap. Well, we are now more expensive in our products than at least half of the French manufacturers and of our competitors, and we managed to sell. Why? Because we made it clear what our competitive advantages are and what we offer to these companies, which is better than some of their old suppliers. So if I may conclude to finish again, or is that okay?
Yes, please.
My final 2 points for you would be think very hard and be very honest with yourself and why you. What is your value proposition? What do you propose that others don't? And particularly, why would a client or a prospect, how they say in French, a potential client, why would he change his existing supplier, which is easy because he knows how it works, to you? You need to have it very clear. And you see some of our competitors from Poland have went a different way. There's a company which is one of the largest in Europe now, which focuses on low cost, fast delivery, but they only do very standard sized windows. So that's their competitive advantage. I've presented some of the things we do differently. I encourage you to find whatever it is that makes you competitive compared to a local supplier or the existing supplier, whether it's foreign or French or not, and be very, very clear to your client and communicate on that. Don't communicate about everything else because that can be very confusing. Just be very precise and be honest with yourself. And then the second message and the last, to finish on a positive note, I think we have a lot of know-how and a lot of advantages in Romania, and we don't utilize them always to the best of what we can do. So my message would be to be brave and don't fight on price, because price is transitory. Today you're the cheapest, tomorrow someone else will be the cheapest. Focus on long-lasting partnerships and have the courage to go and try, because sometimes all that's missing is just a little bit of courage to go and knock on a few doors. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paul, for sharing your experience in working in France and with French partners and French companies. I'm sure that all of our audience appreciate this experience and your insights about working with French companies. And as we started already to have some questions, I will address you one question. Is pre-domestic expansion a prerequisite to begin export ready, to go to export? So you finished your expansion on a national level and then you go to export, or you can do both in the same time?
If the question is for me, I'm happy to take it. It helps if you have a strong local base, because it gives you the cash and the revenue you need to have the money to invest abroad. That being said, I don't see it necessarily as a prerequisite. And you see, when the financial crisis in 2009 hit Romania, it caught us very unprepared because we were only selling in Romania. And at that point, we wished we had done it before the export expansion, but we hadn't. And then it was really difficult for a few years to do that. I think if you have the capacity to manage it and you have the right people in place, going back to what Vincent was saying earlier about talent, if you have the right people who can do these jobs, and if you have the right person who will lead this export expansion, I think both can be done at the same time. And we are now doing both at the same time. We are not stopping. In Romania, we only cover about half of the territory, particularly the southern bit. So we are continuing our expansion into Romania as well. So I think both can be done, but it's just a matter of, can you manage the resources?
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. We will answer the questions also at the end of the session. And you mentioned in your presentation that one of the best solutions in order to promote your products is to take part in fairs. In fairs organized by Business France or by other organization. And now we have today Nina Mazariuk, who's international sales manager for the trade fair Global Industry. And I would like to invite Nina to present what can you tell us about the global industry and how can the companies find opportunities in participating in this trade fair?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Adrian. Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to present today global industry that will take place. Next page, please. That will take place from 6 to 9 September at Lyon, which is the industrial region in France. Just a few words to say, global industry is organized alternatively between two cities in France. Of course, one edition takes place in Paris, and then the next year we organize in Lyon. We would try to alternate between two cities in order to give more opportunities to business opportunities to our exhibitors. Next page, please. First of all, what is global industry today? So global industry is the merge of the 4 industrial fairs, which is MIDEST. They show dedicated to the all industrial subcontracting know-how. Then we have also smart industry, and this event is dedicated totally to the industry 4.0, all the novelties today that we can meet on the industrial market. Then we have industry, which is an exhibition dedicated to the production technologies and equipment event. And finally, we have Tolexpo, the show that is entirely dedicated to sheet metal, tube, and the section working. So these 4 industrial fairs was united together since 2017 under the high patronage of the French president, Emmanuel Macron, in order to create a really interesting and exhaustive exhibition, industrial exhibition in France. And in order to give more visibility to our exhibitors and to facilitate the visit to our visitors, we are organized in 15 sectors, our 4 industrial fairs. So we have assembly, mounting, fastening sectors, we have electronic sectors, we have additive manufacturing and 3D printing sector today, finishing and material treatment, forging foundry sector, materials, measurement, control and vision, plastics, rubber and composite sectors, robotics services and factory equipment, smart tech, green tech, and we have a special, we can say, a sector, which is the name regions and countries, which is today totally dedicated to the collective participations. What does it mean? For example, if today, for example, Romanian embassy will decide to organize a collective participation, a presence of the Romanian different countries from the industrial sector, so we will have this possibility to organize a Romanian pavilion at this part of this sector. And a few words about, yes, please, next slide. Now a few words about our international offer. So Global Industry is an international exhibition, and we have today more than 650 exhibitors that are coming from abroad. We have more than 40 countries represented at our event and more than 29 international pavilions. An important point of our event is that we have a support of more than 50 international organizations. We have just a small view of them that are presented. For example, we are working for several years with FEPA, which is the Federation of European Producers of and Abrasives, and they organize since several years a participation of the Romanian pavilions. Next page, please. I would like also to give you some key figures of the past edition of the Global Industry that have been organized in Lyon in 2019. So we welcomed more than 2,500 exhibitors. In terms of space, it represented 110,000 square meters. In terms of visitors, we welcomed more than 45,861 exhibitors, and 9% of them were international, coming from more than 84 countries. And now I would like briefly to present you our visitors profile. More than 47% of the visitors at our event are decision makers. Then we have also the specifiers and also users. And among them, we have a big number of the subcontractors, manufacturers, and the design officers. It's also interesting to know where coming from our visitors. Next page, please. Of course, a big part of them, as we organized in France, French visitors, and as the event took place in Lyon, donc a big number of visitors are coming from this region and from the neighbor regions. But if we're talking about foreign visitors, we have more than 90% of visitors who comes from the Switzerland. More than 30% are coming from Italy, from Portugal, from Spain, from Germany, from Belgium. The Global Industry is quite a very well international event. Next page, please. Our visitors, and I think it's very important to know to the companies who wants to come and to try French market today, our visitors coming from the following industrial sectors. So from the mechanical engineering sectors, from the automobiles, from the metals, aerospace industry, machine tools, building and civil engineering, design offices, electronics, plastics, tooling, boiler making, etc. And the big part of the visitors are small and medium enterprises. But even if a big number of companies, visitors who come from the small and medium enterprises, we have at least a big number of the big European companies who visit us every year. For example, from the automotive industry, we have a company such as Toyota, Volkswagen, BMW, Renault, Peugeot, who visits us every year. We have then the aeronautics industry, chemistry industry, energy industry, electronics. So we have a very good visibility among these big companies also. As for the visitors' testimonials, they notice that they're very satisfied by the context made during the show and the big number and the quality of the exhibitors. And sometimes several companies who visits in order to try our event to see how it's organized decides after to participate as an exhibitor at our event. Now I would like to say a few words about the exhibitors. The main reason of the participation, of course, of the exhibitors is the prospection. but it combines with three other reasons. The first one is the possibility to present products and services during the show. I think it's the best way to show to the visitors the quality, the possibility to respond to the needs of the visitors. Then also the possibility to meet new clients and consolidate relationships, and also the possibility to promote the company. Next page, please. Usually, during the 4 days of the exhibition, the exhibitors met around 70 contacts on their stand. And what was noticed during the analysis of the participation, that 45 contacts of them are the new one. And 72% of the made contacts have an investment, and usually it's the medium term of the investment, which might last from 6 months to 1 year. Next page, please. So, and what is the formula which has led to the global industry success today? So I need to know that the global industry is the only French event today which brings together the industrial ecosystem, the value chain, and the user markets in their entirety. We propose today a worldwide technological offer. We benefit from an active support of the main international and national authorities who visit us with the institutional delegation during the show. We put in light recent new developments. We're trying to create a real platform for exchanges in order to facilitate relations between customers and suppliers. And also, next page, please. I would like to put in light some activities that we organize during our exhibitions. We're in our way today to develop a new sector, which is the green tech, that will be dedicated to the green transition of the industry, which is the most successful today. We created a campus. It's an area entirely dedicated to employment. For example, if today there is a companies that are looking for the new employees, they can just share their job offer on this space, or maybe just to come to visit this space in order to see if they can find an employee that they need today in the different fields of the industry. We have the awards activity, which is the most of the popular at the show. It's a real opportunity to our exhibitors to submit to the committee their innovation products and to have a chance to be selected and win a prize. During the 4 days, we'll also organize different types of conferences, roundtables, and also master classes. We're talking about different industrial points, which is more relevant on the market today. And also we organize demonstrations in the different activity sectors, such as robotics show, painting on life, and many others, according to the different sectors that we have today at the industry. And in order to finalize my presentation, as I said before, the global industry was created and organized under high patronage of the French President of the Republic. We have today support of more than 115 institutional partners, and we have a support of more 70 media partners. And I would like just to give some names of some Romanian companies who has already took part at the global industry. For example, we had already participation of the Eastman Impex, the company specialized in the industrial services. Then we have Pharmatech, a company who specializes in technical textiles. Poltex, they are working in the rubber processing, and for example, Somep, who is working in metal shaping and cutting activity. So I will not take more longer my time, but in any case, if you have any additional questions or if you need more additional information about our event, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina, for your presentation and for the event you presented us. I'm sure that there are some companies that already light on some ideas about how they can participate to this event. But in order to have a complete image of our support and how we can support the participation of the companies to this event, I would like to ask Christine Dujardin to give us a short overview about how CCIFER can support the Romanian companies in this approach.
Thank you, Adrian. So I'm going to be quick because we're coming to the end of our presentation. So with the previous presentation, you've seen that France should be considered as a market of interest for your potential development. So now moving on to the next step of approaching the market, as Nina presented it, a trade fair such as Global Industry represents a real opportunity to grow your business and to get to know your future clients and partners. As Paul Chakyu mentioned it also, Q4 has participated in every year in such a trade fair. So, however, what does it require us to participate in such an event? Preparation and anticipation in order to get a real return on investments. So here are the different issues that you should deal with before considering your participation. First point, if we're going to the next slide, yes. First point, why do you want to participate? What is your main goal? Do you want to find some new clients? Do you want to develop your visibilities? Do you want to retain customers or just to study your market? According to your targets, you should set some KPIs in order to assess the return on investment on your participation. And for instance, if your target is to find some new clients, maybe your objective will be to get 100 new contacts for your prospecting file. Second point, make yourself known by your targets. I think that without an upstream communication plan, you won't get the expected results. Inform your targets about your participation to the trade fairs. Invite the key actors, because visitors who come to a trade fair are proactive. They already know before coming who they are going to meet and what they are looking for. So your communication before the event must be catchy enough to hold the attention of your prospects. So announce it on social media, send newsletter, and mobilize your team to communicate around them. Third point, prepare your commercial speech and organize your meetings in advance. You must prepare your team and train them to your commercial speech. What are the main points of your offer, your stakes, which are from information do you want to get? You can also invite some clients who can exchange with prospects on the fair with strong arguments for each of them. Reward customer loyalties, make them discover new products in preview or doing meetings with the ecosystem. And last but not least, prepare the next step. We know that the follow-up of such an event is often underestimated by companies. So after a fair, qualify your leads, register your contacts in your CRM, and send individual message to all the people that you've met. If we're moving to the next slide, CCIFER will be exhibitor on the next session of Global Industry. So it will be in September. We will be there alongside with over many French chambers. So therefore, we can support you in the preparation of Global Industry. Before the trade fair, we can support you by targeting and approaching your potential customers, plan meetings during the trade, or taking care of your digital communication, and also during the trade fair with logistics support. So this is only an illustration of our support, but we can also exchange with you to define tailor-made services, such as representation mandate, for example. And next slide to finish. As you may know, CCIFER is also providing with other services to support your development. So you have the approach of a market prospection, commercial development, or implementation. So if you have any question about our services or wish to have more information, we'll be pleased to exchange with you after the webinar. You can leave a message in the chat if you want to be contacted directly by our department. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Christine. We are coming to our final part of our webinar, the Q&A session. I've seen a question on the slides. Statistically speaking, what would be the performance rate of the companies with foreign capital in France? Maybe Vincent could give us an answer, or if you want, anyone else wants to answer this question, please do. So statistically speaking, what will be the performance rate of the companies with foreign capital in France? I don't know if you have such statistics.
Depends what performance rate means exactly. What we know for sure is that, I mean, if you take one of the key highlights that I shared with you, which is about the expansion projects, I think this is a good indicator, a good metric about the level of success of companies operating in France. And this is something, by the way, where France is really standing out with its competitors, because if you look at the attractiveness profile, let's say, of the UK and Germany, they tend to attract much more new projects than, you know, expansion projects. Whereas France, you know, is the attractiveness profile of France is primarily based on expansion projects. So I would say, you know, that if you expand, if you reinvest, it means that you're quite successful on the market.
And thank you, Vincent. I also have a question for all of you. Anyone can answer. We've seen Brexit. Does Brexit has changed somehow the attractivity of France? Did it increase it compared to other countries, or it is going other way?
So if I may make a few comments on this one. So the first thing is Brexit was not a good news for any of us. And I know that this is, you know, a sentiment which is shared by Business France also, because, you know, ultimately it's, you know, not good for the attractiveness of Europe as a whole, and all European countries need, you know, the European market to support their own specific attractiveness. So it's no good news. Having said that, what we can see so far is that the UK is quite resilient and even resisting quite well with the Brexit. Most probably, you know, there are a few sectors or activities that are really suffering from Brexit. But, you know, since their attractiveness is really based on attracting business services, and business services are not as impacted as, you know, all the supply chain, which is happening around goods, especially, which is happening between the island of between Great Britain and the continental Europe. So that probably explains why there is we can see some resilience of the UK within the Brexit context. But, you know, at the same time, the UK is also, like any European country, is also quite suffering from the decrease in investment that we all anticipate because of the pandemic. But, you know, really to get a very clear idea of how things will play out with the Brexit, we'll have to wait, you know, at least a couple of years, see what's the true impact of all of that on their economy.
Thank you, Vincent. We as Romania are working very close with French company. We have a lot of French company in our association, but we also have automotive companies that have a lot of business business cooperations with French companies, and that was started thanks to Renault investing in Dacia. So we have a mutual good relation with French organization also, but also French companies. So we are promoting this kind of events, and we are glad that we can offer to our members and also to Romanian companies the opportunities to see that they can invest also in other countries and to expand their businesses. And having also Q4 as a company that has a success story investing in France and expanding the business in France, that be a good example for future activities. If there are no other questions, we can still wait for 1 or 2 questions. I invite all the participants to address their questions, their insights on the contacts you will see on the screen, and we are available for any questions, any request of information you might have, also on doing business with France, but also on events like the fair presented is. So thank you for the participation to our webinar, and I wanted to invite you to the next events organized by CCIFER and also by Acaron. Thank you very much to our speakers, and thank you very much to Ernst & Young for supporting our event as a partner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.